Today I'd like to discuss acquisition of a bite registration utilizing the Aqualizer temporary oral splint. The Aqualizer allows for a hydrostatic balancing of the mandible and passive stabilization of the mandible against the maxilla in an open bite registration format. We allow the patient to utilize the Aqualizer for about 10 minutes before we take the registration. So our first project is to figure out which size Aqualizer to use. There is a low volume, a medium volume, and a high volume, all with varying degrees of vertical opening that allow us to accommodate different degrees of overbite. In order to determine which Aqualizer to use, we will measure what we call shimbashi, the vertical measurement from the CEJ of the maxillary central to the CEJ of the mandibular central in centric occlusion. Bite together, please. So what we'll do is, using the Bowley gauge, we'll measure that linear distance. And her linear distance from CEJ to CEJ is 14 millimeters. So what we will use then is an appropriate volume to open her to our goal, which is about 18 millimeters. In Gina's case, what we will use is a medium volume Aqualizer, and what you can see is there are waterbed pads that will rest beneath the maxillary teeth and wrap from buccal of the right side to the buccal of the left side. We will insert this holding the pads under the maxillary teeth and ask the patient to close onto the pads. 18 millimeters is generally related to a 1 millimeter vertical overbite. And so what I'm doing is checking, do I have an appropriate volume of Aqualizer to accommodate for about a 1 millimeter vertical overbite? And in this case, the medium Aqualizer works beautifully. At this point, we'll allow the patient to lightly bite, relax, for about 10 minutes in order to deprogram the physiology and allow for a hydrostatic balancing of the mandible without influence of the occlusion. The water beds are connected so that they will self-balance, and so this truly is our deprogrammer. We'll let her sit now for about 10 minutes. It's been about 10 minutes now that Gina has had an opportunity to deprogram. So we're going to take our bite registration. We'll do this in two steps. We'll take an anterior registration with the Aqualizer in, and then we will remove the Aqualizer, re-engage the anterior registration, and add to the registration posteriorly. The first thing we want to do is posturally correct her. I always like to take my registrations with them in a standing, posturally neutral position. So we're going to upright her, get her as upright and as neutral as possible. Now I'm going to take some fast setting registration and ask them just to rest onto the Aqualizer, and we're going to squirt material from the anterior of the Aqualizer on one side to the anterior of the Aqualizer on the other side. This is a 1 minute set material, so we'll allow that to completely set, and then we will remove the Aqualizer and add to the posterior segment. The time has elapsed for the set of the initial registration. I'll ask the individual to open, and I'll hold the registration in place and simply remove the Aqualizer. And then ask them to close back into the registration, confirming that they are completely indexed. At this point, their posture isn't as important because we've recorded the position maxillomandibular relationship. And I'm just going to then squirt material posteriorly so that I have a complete registration. I will bring it onto the anterior portion so they connect to one another. and we'll once again allow that to set. But at this point then, I can confirm through measurement with the Bowley gauge that I have the vertical that I'm asking for. And in her situation, I have 18.5 millimeters, so we know that we have recaptured an appropriate vertical for this individual. And that's it. That's how I take the bite registration with the Aqualizer. We find that our adjustments are minimized when we're making occlusal guards, and it's a great starting point for our restorative cases.